Trick or treat! How you doing?
Hey, what's up?
Good. I'll be right back with one more, but here's one right for now.
Thanks.
I want the candy.
Wait, but he handed it to me.
No, good.
What's
I want it.
He gave it to me.
I want it.
What are you?
Hey guys. Jeez Louise. I have more, I told you, freaks.
Here, you can have this.
Bye guys. So my name is Brian.
I'm Jeremiah.
I'm Brendan.
And today we'll be talking about the think win-win paradigm, also known as habit 4.
Win-win is a lens that looks at life and views it as a cooperative arena, and not a competitive one. Win-win, it frames the mind and the heart to constantly seek a mutual benefit in all human interactions. There are two frames of thinking. Either you're a really nice guy, or you're a tough guy. Win-win requires us to be both. It asks us to balance courage and consideration. It asks us to be both confident and empathetic, and it also asks us to be brave. We have to find that balance between courage and consideration in order for win-win to be effective. Because win-win, having that balance between both courage and consideration, it shows a sign of maturity, and it is an essential part of the win-win mentality. Covey puts it as this: the spirit of win-win cannot survive in an environment of competition and contests. Now, in win-win, there are 6 paradigms of human interaction. The first is win-win in itself. We both win. It's neither your way nor my way. We both get our way out of it. It's everyone gets a piece of the pie, essentially. There's enough to go around for everybody. By having the win-win mentality, we end up following the idea that both parties are necessary for an agreement to happen. We're not excluding one person or saying one person has a better idea than the other. No, you guys both have ideas that can mutually benefit. Now there's also the win-lose. I win, you lose. Think of it as a football team. Football team wins a game, the other team loses. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. The issue with this is that it promotes competition. Just like the game. There's one winner, one loser. This mentality is often dysfunctional and often leads to a Pyrrhic victory, meaning that while one partner gets what they want in the short term out of it, they end up destroying the relationship in the long term.
Thanks, Jeremiah. So for the next part, I'll be talking about the lose-win paradigm. For me, this was one of the hardest paradigms not to read, or not because the material was hard to read or it was dense, but because this is my framework. So raise your hand if any of you guys are familiar or have heard of the Enneagram test. Okay, so a majority of you. For those who are asking themselves what it is, the Enneagram is essentially a personality test that categorizes you to one of the 9 personality traits they provide. It's scary how accurate it is. I'm talking about this because personality number 9, the peacemaker, is the lose-win mentality, also known as me. Much like the Enneagram and Covey, a loose-win or peacemaker mindset allows the individual to have little courage to express their own feelings, thoughts, or convictions. They find it easier to shut their emotions for the greater good. This is also the responsibility of pleasing everyone and anyone, as long as there's synergy and harmony, even if that means me losing in the end. The next paradigm I'll be talking about is the lose-lose paradigm. This one makes me laugh, because I feel like we've all been in that scenario where, I'm so centered and obsessed with the other enemy or the person I hate or dislike, and we don't feel at peace until that person feels awful, miserable, or loses. Even if that means us losing in the process, but we want to see the other person suffer. That desire is a pretty cynical way of thinking. For the most part, this type of paradigm results really in 2 individuals acting on a win-lose thought process. That is, individuals with determined, stubborn, and ego-invested mindset. This paradigm gives opportunity for subjects to be blinded to the fact that murder is suicide. And my favorite analogy that Covey uses is that revenge is a 2-edged sword. At a philosophical level, Lose-lose can be the thought of individuals who live without inner direction, or act upon the notion that if I'm miserable, others should be miserable. The theme of if I can't have you, no one can have you. And Brendan will talk about the other two.
Thanks.
With the win paradigm, it's a very selfish one. It's where I have to get what I want, and it doesn't matter what happens to the other person. If they win or they lose, as long as I get what I want, it's okay. The next one is win-win or no deal, where we both win, or there's no deal and there are no hard feelings. Having the option to have the no deal and allowing both parties to opt out is opt out when a win-win situation cannot be agreed. And that's important to maintain relationships. And I found this video clip where there was this guy and he was at a pawn shop, he was trying to sell his ring, but they both couldn't agree on their prices. So the customer walked out, but he can always come back another day where they exchange their services. With that being said, we have an activity. If you guys will flip to the back of your sheets, you guys can give an analogy or some examples for each of the paradigms of the human interactions. So we'll give you guys a minute or two.
If you guys are stuck, you guys can talk about or reflect on even like movie clips you've seen that remind you of this scenario. I mean, that's what really helped me, was looking back at movie clips. So
Just having some excuse to watch a movie clips.
alright, about like 20 seconds left. Alright guys, don't all jump at once, but what are some examples or analogies that you guys provided? Yeah, Michael.
I like my win-win analogy. So in Colorado, there's a big problem with scrub oak and trees that grow and create fire danger.
Mhm.
So one of the things you do is you cut it down, and you can call people who come and take that away, and they make it into mulch for their business and sell it. But you get to like get rid of it in a way, so it's winning for you and it's winning for them.
Yeah. Wow. Good example.
Yeah.
Alright, does anybody have another example for the next paradigm? Yeah, Jenna.
For the win-lose. I think about like playing card games with my older brothers.
Okay.
And, yeah, often you want to win and so then the other person can't win if you want to win.
Yeah.
So there's just a dividing line between the winner and the loser.
Yeah, yeah. Does anybody have another example or move on to the third one? Oh, yeah.
Oh, for win-lose?
Sorry?
For win-lose? or
Yeah.
for-
Or for anyone.
Well, I used like the same scenario for the first three. It's
Okay.
classic, like Santa Barbara, example where, like, if you have someone who wants ice cream, someone who wants blenders,
Yeah.
there's like 3 options. You can go to Mission Street, but then you just get the ice cream. You can go to the Vons, but you just get the smoothie. Or you can go to State Street, and you get both. Win-win,
Yeah.
win-lose, lose-win.
Perfect.
Class, impressive.
Does anybody else have any examples for any of the other paradigms that you guys want to share?
The movie Mean Girls for Losers.
How so?
She like, I mean I haven't seen the movie in a long time, so this might not be totally perfect, but she like wants to put the other person down and she herself becomes one of the Mean Girls. Lose-lose.
What about win-win or no deal? If not, we can give examples. That helps too.
My example is the one already given.
Okay. Alright. Well, transitioning from that activity, we'll dive in deeper on how to think or have a mentality of a win-win paradigm. So there are 5 crucial dimensions that Covey expresses in this chapter. And those 5 are character, relationships, agreements, supportive system, and process to have an effective human interaction, thus having a win-win scenario. Due to time, we'll only talk about character and dive into those 3 subdivisions of character. And from that, I'll hand it off to Brendan.
Thanks, Ryan. So character is the foundation of win-win, and there are 3 character traits that build onto this paradigm. The first one is integrity. Covey defines integrity as the value we place on ourselves with habits 1, 2, and 3, guiding us to maintain integrity. On a daily basis, he emphasizes the importance of identifying and executing our actions based off of our values. This allows individuals to gain a sense of self-awareness and independent will, with a goal in mind to make and keep the commitments that we have already made. One quote that really stood out to me was on page 217. He said, "If we can't make and keep commitments to ourselves as well as to others, our commitments become meaningless." My old roommate once told me something that has stuck with me. He said, "A man without his word has nothing." And I've never heard of that at that point. And I believe that there is some merit in holding yourself accountable to the words that you say. And I don't think that being fake helps anyone. Jeremiah?
So the next part is maturity. Now, with maturity, there's a balance between courage and consideration. Now, Covey asks us that we have a balance of both. It's not too much of one and not too much of the other. We make this shift when we have this balance from dependent to independent to interdependent. So we go from the shift on relying on someone else to relying on ourselves to both parties matter. Now, one of the most crucial aspects to this trait theory is the human interaction. Social interaction is a key part that helps manage both your win and the other person's win. Success in human interactions for both parties to obtain a win, you have to know who you're working with and what they're looking for. That allows you both to come with a good agreement. For this theory of human interaction to be effective, Covey elaborates on the importance of using consideration and courage as a framework. Now, if you guys look at your sheets, you guys will see a diagram. What you'll see on one axis there's courage, and on the other axis there's consideration. Now, in between that, you'll see 4 different boxes. One says win-win, the other one says lose-win, win-lose, and lose-lose. Now, if we follow one of the axes by primarily just staying, like, let's say courage. If you follow courage all the way across, you realize you can't get to win-win. Now, if you follow consideration, you're not going to get to win-win either way also. However, when you find that balance, you can achieve the win-win scenario. Just like I said, with any diet, too much of something can be unhealthy. If we have too much courage, it can lead to us being stubborn and ego-bound, as Covey says. As a result, we can begin to compensate with our lack of maturity. We then tend to use our power. We then tend to use our seniority or affiliations, and as a result, we end up in the win-lose paradigm. If we have too much consideration, We can lose our own consideration of our own convictions and desires, and as a result, we end up in the lose. So, take it away.
Lastly, one of the characteristic traits under character is the abundance mentality. And to understand abundance mentality, we first got to look at scarcity mentality. So as we saw earlier in that introduction, where I handed one piece of candy, and I told them I was going to come back with more, they overreacted and only saw one of the candy, just one candy bar, you know, which set off more of a, I believe, more of a social structure of what many people live by today, in that when we see only one or think about one, we automatically respond in that sense that it's limited, that there's no abundance of that material. I clearly told them I was going to come back with more, and when they saw more and I threw them at them, they were just, I guess, happy. I don't know. Individuals with this principle are always on the edge of their seat when it comes to success, recognition, and power. There's also a lack of consideration for others, and that there's a need of feeling superior to others and having others be inferior and specific and appropriate positions to their attitude. And with this comes the sense of betrayal, jealousy, and comparative and competitive attitudes. And clearly, abundance mentality is the opposite of this framework, in that people with a growth mindset live in paradigm that there's plenty of out there for everyone and anyone, and we can all share it. That success, recognition, and possibilities and public victories are noticed. In the case that public victories is not success over one another, but it's success with one another, eventually leading into an effective interaction that brings everyone involved, allowing to work together, communicate together, and create together. And on that note, Jeremiah will wrap it up for us.
So, I want to give you guys 3 ways to think about win-win. I first want you to think about any upcoming interactions you may have. Think about any scenarios in the future where it's going to be you and someone else having to come to an agreement. I want you to write down a list of what you want and what they want. And what that'll help you do is realize, is there a balance that we can find between each other? Second, I want you guys to identify 3 relationships in your life. Then I want you to feel how those balances in each of those relationships. Are you giving more than you take? Are you taking more than you give? Ask yourself the question. Write down the ways in which you can give more than you can take with each one. Because more often than not, we sometimes take more than we give, whether we think it. Now finally, I want you to consider your own interaction tendencies. Are they typically win-lose? Are you more competitive? Are you more considerate? Are you more courageous also? How do these affect your interactions with others? And can you identify the source of that approach? These 3 ways can help thinking about them in your day-to-day life. Have that constant win-win mentality. To sum it up, Covey has this quote: win-win is not a personality technique. It's a total paradigm of human interaction. It comes from a character of integrity, maturity, and the abundance mentality. It grows out of high-trust relationships and is embodied in agreements that effectively clarify and manage expectations, as well as accomplishments. It thrives in a supportive environment. You guys have any questions about any of the paradigms specifically?
So, I guess my question is, as a Christian, when you look at Jesus' life and you look at the way that he operated, I think the first temptation is to think about the way that he lived as a lose-win, in some sense. But I just was wondering if you guys thought about that at all, and maybe if his actions actually fit to a win-win, or if they're a lose-win. Or what you think
Yeah,
about that.
I definitely hadn't made that connection, especially when I was reading this chapter. I mean, looking back at Jesus' experience in life, it's more of a lose-win kind of framework, but we don't understand from his perspective it might be a win-win scenario. So that's always what's in my back of my head is, from the outside, it looks very lose-win. You know, sacrificing himself for everyone. You know, for the sins of. And I just think for him it's more of a win-win scenario. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps, but.
Yeah, I think also if we look at it from a non-faith background, someone's going to think, well, Christianity isn't real, and this guy just died for nothing. So these guys could win in that scenario. So another person from another scenario might see it as that lose-win mentality of if he died, that was it. It's over. least for me, I struggled with that, but I think it does come into a win-win scenario, because ultimately, like, his actions are more than just that. So I think that the death and resurrection ultimately made it the win.
Yeah, I guess it's like, it's the ultimate victory, so, yeah, I don't know, sorry. Next question.
Anybody else?
In the grid is when it, for the different quadrants, it says like weak, nice, tough, and nice. Is the first adjective, so like weak or tough, is that a reflection on yourself? And then nice or not nice is a reflection on how you treat other people, or what does that mean?
Yeah, so earlier Covey said, he brought up the framework as the two thoughts, either you're really nice or really tough. Now, you can be really nice, but as a result, sometimes other people will bulldoze you over. And so what can happen is, oh, I'm too nice, but other people can just topple over me. And as a result, my point doesn't get shot across. But sometimes you can come across as too tough. And when you're too tough, other people are going to back down, and it's just going to create that competitive environment of, oh, what I want is more important than what you want. And so what you see below is the two different sides of how you come across or how the other person comes across.
For me personally, I resonated with the lose-win paradigm, and if you guys are willing to share maybe one or two of what paradigm you guys fit, that'd be awesome. And just seeing what that experience has been like. Yeah,
I definitely find myself falling in the win-lose category very often. When I start to think, especially when I start to think solely about myself as an individual and not in the context of a society or a team or things like that. So I definitely struggle with that.
Thanks for sharing. Would anybody else like to share? If not, it's totally. Oh, Jenna.
I think I operate largely in the win-win or no-deal category,
Okay.
where, because I can be both very critical of myself but also of other people, I do it because often I want people to succeed or be better or do the right thing or whatever. That when I see that that's like not possible or whatever, or I think I see that it's not possible, that I just like don't try. So it's either, oh, it can happen, and so I'm gonna work for both of us to be able to win, or it's not worth it, so.
Have both
no.
parties benefit at the end rather than
Yeah.
just one.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you.
So guys, what you up to?
Hey, what's up, Daniel?
What's up, man?
I don't know, just chilling in class, waiting for the next presentation, but honestly, I can't even read the board from back here. I can't even like see who's supposed to be presenting next.
What's wrong with your eyes, man?
Uh,
Decent glasses?
yeah, I don't know, just like over the years, just all this reading at Westmont has just really declining my vision, and I don't think staring at the sun's been helping either.
Oh man, that's not good. I mean, here, you can try my glasses. They've worked for me for over the years.
Thanks, man. I mean, I'm not so sure about that, but thank you.
How are they? Are they working?
I'm not so sure about that.
I mean, really think positively, Tyler. I think, you know, if you just think positively, you'll be able to see who's presenting. I mean, I can't see because I don't have my glasses, but...
I mean, I trust you, but I'm positive they aren't working.
Oh, well, here, give them back. Thanks, you're welcome for trying to help you out.
So, we are habit 5. I'm Daniel.
I'm Tyler.
Taylor.
And our habit is learning how to seek first to understand, then to be understood. So what we saw between Tyler and Taylor. Taylor didn't diagnose the problem of poor eyesight before prescribing a solution. So he wasn't able to understand before presenting a solution. And that goes with a lack of communication, poor communication skills. And there are actually 4 4 levels of listening that we usually do, and there's 1 level that we don't always do, and Tyler is gonna talk about that one.
So communication is key aspect to just all kinds of social interaction that we go through every day. And there's 4 basic types of communication. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. These are all things that we do on a daily basis. And if you really think about it, growing up, we've been trained to be masters at 3 of these, but not necessarily the 4th. And just kind of growing up in like educational system, we were always being trained to read, write, and speak, but not necessarily listen. Yeah, we've been growing up listening to our professors and our teachers talk, but that's more of gaining the skill of a sponge, where we just absorb knowledge and information that they're giving, which is very different than empathically listening. And there's a big difference between that, and Taylor will kind of describe that.
Cool, yeah, so, on your sheet, there's 5 different things for listening. There's ignoring, pretending, selective listening, attentive listening, and empathic listening. So ignoring is like kind of what you might do with your parents or your roommate, or like they're talking and you're like, okay, cool. Pretending, is exactly how it sounds. You're like, yeah, I'm kind of listening to you. Not really. Selective listening, which a lot of people do have, at least for me in class sometimes. I'll pick up on little keywords. I mean, maybe like the last presentation with Michael and competition. When you hear competition, you're like, oh, let's do this. Attentive listening is when you're actually actively listening to someone when they're actually talking, which is what we should all be doing right now, right? And then lastly, empathic listening, which is actually listening to understand a person. And this is kind of the most, we rarely use this type of listening, and Tyler will explain a little bit more about listening.
Yeah, so that's a very important part of listening, is where everyone is saying something different, we're not all on the same page, and it's important that we seek to understand them before we try and respond and try to be understood ourselves, but that's not what we typically do. Typically when we listen and respond and communicate with people, usually have like 4 different autobiographical responses. Like we probe when we are talking to people, and we investigate, and we do basically like kind of 20 questions where we just keep asking them questions that's kind of based on our own frame of reference and experience. We evaluate, which is we either agree or disagree with whatever they're telling us based on our own opinions and biases. We advise, so we kind of give counsel to whatever their problem is or whatever they're talking about based on what we think, based on our experiences of what we've gone through. Or we interpret, which is we try and figure out the person, or we try and figure out and explain their motives or their behaviors based on our own motives and behaviors. And these responses just come natural to us. And we even grow up learning and going through experiences that provoke certain thoughts and feelings that we learn and start to just correlate that, like, this experience should make you feel this way, or like then you should do this, and we set those as facts, when in reality that is not always the case, and those kinds of things are subjective to each person, and those are actually incorrect, and that you need to focus more on empathically listening to be able to approach any kind of conversation or communication with someone, because it's different for each person, and we're all different, and Daniel will go into the different ways to empathically listen.
Okay, so if you go down about halfway onto your handout, you guys, it says 4 developmental stages of empathic listening. I'm just going to quickly go over those. So the first stage is mimicking. So you literally just repeat back what you just heard. And there's a good example in the book that I'm going to go over. It's an interaction between a father and his son, and the son's having difficulty at school. So the son would say, "Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds." And the dad, using the first stage to just mimic, would just say, "You've had it. You think school is for the birds." So that's like the first, least effective way to listen empathically. Then you take it one step further and you rephrase the content. So the son again would say, "Dad, I've had it. School is for the birds." And then the dad would say, "You don't want to go to school anymore." So he's putting his own spin on what he just heard. He's using a little bit more of his brain, but not much. And then you move to the third stage, which is reflecting the feeling. So you take the emotion of what you just heard and you put that into what you're going to reply with. So the dad would say, the son would say, Dad, I've had at school is for the birds. Dad would say, you're feeling really frustrated, taking the emotion out of what he just heard from the son and putting that into his own words. And then the last stage would be to rephrase both the content and the feeling. So you rephrase the content like in stage 2, and you also reflect the feeling like in stage 3. So the dad would say, you're feeling really frustrated about school, putting a subject to the emotion. And listening empathically is really important for building relationships and connections with people. But the most important thing is to be authentic and not try to manipulate or be fake with someone, because it's pretty easy for me at least to tell when someone's trying to just play me, just be fake, and that can lose credibility. That can lead to you losing your credibility with that person. Also, if you listen empathically with a good sense of understanding, or not understanding, but what's the word? With sympathy, listening with sympathy, and you authentically seek to understand, you are able to rephrase the content and reflect the feeling, and you're also able to give the person you're talking to and interacting with this psychological air, which Taylor will go into a little bit about.
So as like Daniel was saying, empathic listening is a tremendous deposit in the emotional bank account. It's deeply therapeutic and healing because it gives that person, like Daniel said, psychological air. And in my experience, personal experience, I've been seeking a lot of therapy lately. And talking one-on-one with someone who actually empathetically listens, they just kind of give you clarity. They organize your thoughts, and you just honestly, you feel amazing after. That's just kind of my sense, because I shouldn't say I don't really trust anybody, I trust all you guys, but I don't have anyone here on that connection level where someone can listen to me, because all my friends back home, I can't really talk to them. But yeah, it's an amazing kind of sense. There's a quote at the end that I'd love to share with you, but Tyler is going to do a little bit more about.
And just kind of like how Taylor said about empathically listening and how you get that psychological air that satisfies you after, is that it's actually really good to being able to solve problems, and it's a lot of reasons why we don't do that and why there still are problems in interpersonal communications and relations with people. In fact, that it's actually really good at helping at nipping the problem in the bud. It's like what people say, instead of letting that fester and go through. And in fact, Covey uses this example in the book and this analogy that I actually really liked, because a lot of people say that empathic listening just takes too much, it's too hard, that it's a lot easier to just go, yep, as someone's talking. But he uses this analogy of when he was writing in Hawaii, and it started to get hot, so he opened up a window on one side of the room, and then opened up a window on the other, just to get a cross breeze. And as he's writing, he's just making a pile of all his rough drafts and his papers, and the breeze starts to pick up, and the wind just rips through, and papers start flying everywhere. They're not even numbered pages, so he can either just frantically try and catch these out of the air and bring them all together in a panic, or just take 10 seconds to go and close the window and solve this problem that way. And it's that analogy of if we empathically listen, that we're going to be nipping that problem in the bud before we even let that fester or whatever it is and become that kind of problem between communications with people.
And then, so we pretty much just went over the first part, seek first to understand. Now there's kind of a little section for then seek to be understood, so seek to be understood yourself. In your little handout, there's the ethos, pathos, and logos. So knowing how to be understood is as important as seeking to understand and reaching win-win solutions, which we just learned. It requires courage. Ethos, which is your personal credibility, so if you're a doctor, you're good at that specific field. if you are pathos, so that's, so ethos, pathos is like the sympathetic side, the feeling that I bring out in you guys or the audience that you're presenting to, and then logos is the logic. It's such as reasoning with you guys or something like that. And then using these three Greek philosophies, we can create effective communication, how to be understood. In the book, he uses the example of the professor who used the ethos, pathos, and logos, where the professor could not get any grant money from a specific research project, and so he used the those three stages for ethos, pathos, and logos, and he got the grant. He appealed, so he had his credibility of being, I don't think he specified what he was, but he was a doctor. He appealed to the emotional side of the audience. Is like, well, this is important, we need to do this, and he gave the reasoning why that they should do this, and then I think the next day he got a call saying, I got the grant. But going back to the very beginning, there was this really amazing quote that actually I loved. It said, oh, well, I'll read it. It says, the greatest need of human being is psychological survival. To be affirmed, to be validated, and to be appreciated. And I think that just kind of deeply roots with everyone. There was a quote, Tyler, you probably know a little bit better with survival, with air.
Yeah, he talked about how like when you're in a room full of air, you're not really thinking about breathing and stuff, but if you take away that air, all you're going to be thinking about and all your motivation is going to be towards getting that breath and getting that air. And it's kind of the same thing with that psychological air, is that something that we greatly, like, we want that affirmation and stuff. And we have that need and satisfaction to get that, and I think empathically listening is a way to give that to people. Yeah, and so I just want to, like, a little call to action of, as you go and through your relations with people and communications with people, in all kinds of scenarios, big or even little, just to focus on seeking to understand them before you respond or reply, to have them to be understood yourself. You guys have any questions about habit number 5? Yeah.
Which level of listening are you guys?
Depends on the situation.
Well, like a majority of you were to sum up your interactions throughout the day, what would you say?
I'd say, to be honest, a majority of my conversations, I'd say that I'm probably a selective listener, even though I'm not proud of that. I think that I totally zone out and just kind of like come back and be like, yeah, or like hear one thing that kind of brings me back as I've been thinking about something else. And it's difficult to be able to focus on empathically listening.
Definitely more selective for me as well.
I'm probably honestly pretending. My roommates talk a lot and I just zone it out, so it's not, not something I'm proud of, but definitely after reading this chapter, it'll be something that I work on.
Do you think there's ever a good time to ignore when you're listening?
Your roommates talking. I mean, probably not. Honest, for me, I'd say ignoring is kind of like a slap in the face to the person that's trying to share something with you. There's maybe one exception to where ignoring would be good, but I can't really think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah. For me personally, it's like I could find a time where I feel like that's okay, but once I look at it as a whole and see that and realize that people just want that psychological air to be affirmed and stuff, I realize that, wow, like I could be trying more and not ignoring them right now.
I think one thing that actually adds to that is that I was reading a book about that talked about this, and it discussed like different age ranges and the way we listen. And so for us, if we're talking with our peers, then absolutely like we want to be empathically listening as often as we can. But it's exhausting if you do it with a toddler, because most of their speech is actually incoherent, and like they're still figuring out how to maneuver the English language. And so if you're trying to empathically like listen to a child who doesn't really actually have that much content, often repeats themselves, all kinds of stuff like that, I'm like, yeah, ignoring them sometimes is what you do. Or like if a baby is crying, you're not like listening to that all the time on purpose. So it's, I think different ages and different communication plays a big role in that.
Really good point.
I think that there are times where you can ignore not just toddlers or tiny babies. Like for example, I play lots of video games, and there are times when people just cry, like not literally cry. Like for example, they'll be like, "Oh, this guy sucks. Like he was dropped on his head when he was born. You know, your mom, blah 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 blah." And then those people, you just hit the mute button on them, and you just ignore them completely, because all they do is just get in your head. They're like, why is this guy talking instead of playing? Why is he typing? You know. So I think that there is definitely a time to ignore and not listen.
Like within sports,
Yeah.
especially.
Any other questions or comments?
A question? Coming from a very different generation, going back to Campus Scotland now. What, after you've read this and presented on it, what are you personally aspiring to do based on what you read?
Personally for me, as I have a lot of friendships and relationships that I think are on the surface, I think I have a lot of friends, but I don't think I have a lot of deep, close friends, and I think personally I would like to further those and make some deeper ones and better connections with people using this habit number 5.
I think for me, he talked a lot about like autobiographies and how when someone comes to you with a problem, you tend to, like in the beginning with me and Tyler, it's like, oh, his eyes are bad, my eyes are bad, I'm going to give him my glasses, obviously it'll help. I feel like that's my problem when it comes to people who are talking with me. I'll be like, it's like, what's the old adage? It's walk in another person's foot.
Walk a mile.
Yeah, there we go. That's the one. I think I put it on there. I tend to just like kind of walk in my own shoes, and if something will come to me with a problem, I would use my personal experience, and I'm not really in his experience. I don't know what he's experiencing. I know what I experienced when that happened. It could be 100% different with him.
Yeah, for me it'd be pretty similar to Tyler, because I tend to I tend to like go through life and then project my circumstances, my experience onto someone that may be talking to me. So just trying to understand, like seeking first to understand their perspective, where they're coming from, and then trying to help them in their experience, and not, unless it's appropriate, not projecting myself onto them.
Thank you.